Hi everyone, welcome to Membership Voice. I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of The Voice and host for this evening's webinar. A very special welcome to tonight's presenter, past President Peter Durrant from Rotary Karrinyup in Western Australia. Hey Peter, how are you?
I'm fabulous, thank you, Kero.
Super, great. Thanks for being with us tonight, mate. Okay, but before I go any further, as is traditional for Membership Voice, it's important at this stage for me to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm hosting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I love some of the recent reconciliation initiatives that are continuing here in Western Australia. Now for tonight's presentation, Rotary Karrinyup, to be presented by past President Peter Durrant. Over to you, please, Peter.
Thank you very much, Kero, and welcome everybody. The story tonight is how we've developed a successful club model that sort of builds the strong community connections, participation and membership. It was really quite exciting for me to be requested to spend this story. Kero and I are pretty close. We've known each other for a long, long time, and we've shared lots of ideas. And the journey of Karrinyup, we're in our 48th year, and there's a whole lot of stories to tell. So my world is about how do we put this in a succinct way? What are the key things that have made us connect to our community so well? And I've started up with this front page where this was the title of what we're doing. And up here, I've got our original annual report that was written by our past district governor, Graham Fosbury, who was our charter president back in 1974. And I'm going to talk about wondering where we've come from and some of the lively things we're doing in a dynamic environment with a local government that's well connected to us and a whole lot of community support that we get from the projects we do. And I want to sort of walk through that story as we go. So first of all, I want to just talk about understanding our past. If we forget where we've come from, we really can't really work out where we're going to. So that's part of it. And then I want to sort of talk about where are we off to, what we're going to do. And if we think about what is our why, if we understand your why, you're in pretty good shape. But it's pretty difficult to do it without some dollars in the world that we do it. So that's be part of it. And then I want to just introduce a couple of projects that make a difference from our process. So that's sort of where I want to go. And I probably only 15, 20 minutes max. And then I'm really interested in having a conversation because there's so many wonderful people who are connected to us here. And the idea of asking questions and interacting is far more important to me than telling the story. So in some ways, I'm going to do some of the administrative story first because there's an understanding where we've come from. And if you think about 48 years of Rotary in the area of Karrinyup, which is the Stirling city, there's so much that's been done over a lot of time. So we've got one charter member that's still with us, and a lot of very senior Rotarians, our octogenarians, have set a pace and a story for us that is just very, very special. And we have got administratively well-structured processes in as much as we've got all of our annual reports online for those who are joining us. I can go back to the original annual report, as I said, that was on the front page. But every year we document what we did. And when you want to go back and find out what we've done, it is pretty special to have a read and an understanding. sometimes our minds don't take us to the exact facts. And when you start to go back into the archives and have a read, and I'm talking about going right back to 1974, our first annual report, and some of the presidents who are even on this particular graphic are still with our club. And when you think about the work that goes into planning a club's work, prosecuting an operational plan, and then closing it off, going into your next year through a solid succession planning process, you get to really understand the power of planning and organising. And back quite some time, we started thinking about how do we create our operational plans and pull them together. And again, you can go to our thing here, our operational plans, through our members area on the homepage. You go to the club documents, and you can get all of this information that is sitting there and is updated regularly. It's well structured. Go back through our club and district yearbooks. We can catch up with those people through our membership connection who were past members of our club, and we keep in touch with them. We have a very solid Friends of Rotary. We have a solid process of making sure that our past Rotarians who are no longer going to spend time in the club, but they remain with us as members in all sorts of ways through our support process. But our operational plans, the story of our grants that we've done, there's a history back here that is really important to us, that we do not forget, and we certainly understand our past. And then we're sitting here at the 48th year, and back probably about 2 or 3 years, we said we're going to come up to our golden anniversary. It's time to start preparing for it. And we've been thinking about how we're going to create our 40th anniversary project. And so the funding is then put aside. We try and put a certain amount of dollars aside of where we're going. And we've got a project team together, and the process connected to our local local council, our local Indigenous groups, all our local friends of the Star Swamp, friends of all the different areas environmentally. And we're starting to move towards this, considering a proposal for a discussion process leading forward. And when you connect to your local Indigenous groups, and they're the ones who are standing forward saying, our discussion is not about necessarily our story. We want to understand about the people who came to the Karrinyup area many years ago and started the market gardens. We want to have a conversation about our entire community. And that is developing in a way that is really quite exciting. And so when you've got that vision out there of where you're going, and people can be involved with that, and we're inclusive in our ideas generation, the ideation, there's a whole lot of gold that comes out of that. Then out of the blue, one of the Rotarians who happened to be just past president of one of the Geraldton clubs up in 400 kilometres north of us, their son heard about our process and said, I'm an architect and I'm really focused on Aboriginal design in architecture. Can I come to you and work with you pro bono on your project? And through the connection, the collaboration, the talking through the visions of where we're going, you attract a whole lot of people who come with you. And this happened in our 40th year. We had current Ian McDonough, who's still a charter member with us. He was connected to Professor Harvey Coates, who happened to be one of the eminent ear, nose and throat specialists in WA. And he's been working in the world of hearing for Aboriginal kids for a long time. And he had this dream to procure a mobile ear clinic, and sort of came to us and said, can you build me a mobile ear clinic? And anyone who knows Professor Coates is the answer is always yes to Harvey. And so our team of engineers in our club, the people who are involved, Ian is a auctioneer by trade, and he's got the ability to attract funds in all sorts of ways. And then we connected to the Airbus Foundation, which Professor Coates had. And so suddenly there's this four-wheel drive truck needed. It needs to have a special air clinic on the back of it, so it has to be soundproofed. And we just got on and built that over a period of time. And by having these continual projects out in front of us that we're building on and are of substance that we really enjoy, the entire team just gets so connected that it's really quite exciting. And that dream was done. It's that Airbus was painted by people from the era, so they see it coming around their area in the Kimberley of Western Australia. They recognise their own artwork. It's their Airbus, and suddenly you've got professional people coming and checking the hearing of these young kids. It's the old story. It's the cycle of poverty, and if you can't hear, you can't learn. You can't learn, you spiral down. And so Professor Coates, being the visionary that he is, if he gets up to the Kimberley and checks people's ears, then we get them into the school, bang, there it goes. And so that's the sort of thing that has kept us moving in a direction which is seriously exciting. But it's difficult without funds, and dollars are the scary part. You think about dollars, but it's important to understand our social impact. And I want to talk about social impact. And this day and age, it's something you can actually measure. Now, we've got nowhere even close to measuring our social impact, but the sort of things we started looking at was when you look at the definition, it's about making a difference. And that's the reason our Rotarians exist. It's about promoting this total expected well-being, and I'll read it to you, considered impartially over the long term. So we're in for the long term. We've been in for the long term, but we don't want to sacrifice anything that might be comparable or moral of importance. So we want to make sure that we do these things. And quick as a flash, you go back to the four-way test, you go back to the objects of Rotary, you go back to our reason for being, and of course, that's where you go. Now, over a period of time, you can count the dollars. This is a 15-year map of the income that we've been able to generate for all sorts of things. The peak here at sort of 200,000 was the Airbus era, where we had to get certain amounts of dollars coming in. And you come up with a figure, and sort of you average 120,000 a year that's able to go into the community. But when you sit back and look at that as a sort of the area of thought, there's more to that. You take this simplistic view of what our labour's worth. And we then thought about, well, we had at that stage about 40 members. If everybody worked 5 hours a week and really 44 weeks a year, you get involved over this 15 years, suddenly you've got a figure of your labour content of about 4.6 mil. Now, that puts the dollar amount that you spend into insignificance, quite frankly. And what you do is then you put it all together and you see your labour component of what you're doing for our total charity income. Might have been 1.8 years over the 15 years, but suddenly you're really realising you could put a figure of nearly $500,000 per year that is going into your community. And these are the sort of things we started thinking about. What is our social dividend? What is our social impact? And of course, this is a very clinical look at it, but it's one aspect that we started thinking about. But it's much, much more than that. And everybody on this call will understand that. And so social impact is about making the world a better place. So how do we start to think about measuring what we do from a social dividend? If we help people to a greater degree and we go through our 7 areas of focus, we do a huge amount of work at that stage. And then you've got your helping more people. How do you spread your wings a little bit further? What can you do? And this is starting to excite us within our club to understand the why we exist, what we do in our Rotary world, and that is something we connect back to our membership. So then, when you're growing from a base of an aging group, and you start to build contemporary focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not an easy sell to a lot of our senior people. They've come up in a completely different world. But if you don't hook into contemporary leadership, contemporary world, you probably miss out on where we're going and understanding those with whom you want to come and join you. They are interested in these sorts of things. So how do you balance the octogenarian's view on life against the new younger member? And their worlds are different, and we have to understand that. So whilst we spent a fair bit of time to look at the Rotary's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's it sort of written there, we also jumped into what it actually means in a lot of other areas. We thought about what does inclusion actually mean? What does diversity actually mean? What does equity actually mean? And it comes at the classic Venn diagram. I love them. It's my engineering background. Very sad, I know, but the old Venn diagram, and you get that lovely connection in the middle, which is all about the belonging, and the organisation that enables full potential of the individual, where innovation thrives and views, beliefs, and values are integrated. You've got to be in a better place. And so that's been part of our journey of growth. During the COVID time, we had our last but 2 president. He stayed on for 2 years during that difficult time. He was a health professional. He wrote our plan for the organisation of the whole COVID area. And we went online straight away when we locked down. But the beauty about what we did there is we went and made sure that all of our people who were not necessarily technically savvy were able to join us. And what actually happened was we had more people turning up online than we had in our face-to-face meetings at a lot of time. And a lot of them, just very happy sitting at home in the warmth of their house with a glass of red, as one does. Most important to be comfortable in how you're doing your business, and then when we finally come back face to face, suddenly we've got the capacity and the capability of pivoting backwards and forwards. So suddenly we're having the odd meeting, board meeting, community meeting, those sorts of things online, and when we can, coming together. And that was because we thought about this inclusion. We talk about the way in which we did business. So in sort of broad terms, before I get onto the projects and why some of these are successful, our strengths, as I said, seriously administratively strong. Our secretary is such a capable administrator. We are ahead of the game. We understand the requirements. And as I said, I showed you the every single one of our past reports being scanned on the area in the website for people to look at. We understand very clearly how we deal with the confidentiality of people's connections. And so whilst you can go back across a number of the past information of their membership, you have still got some protection through a very administratively strong process. Then you've got to be financially sound. It's very interesting about the cost of Rotary these days. We've got to be very careful about how much we charge for people to be part of our team, because not only do you pay your subs, but you're then probably going to have a dinner each week. And you think about a dinner each week at $35, it builds up very quickly. So we have to be very cognizant of the costs to ownership belonging to a club, and you have to understand your clientele, how they are capable of doing so. So we've got the ability to have people coming on, and we'll sponsor them as younger people. There's a number of collaborative processes with the Rotary Club of Crawley, where they have a very strong process of bringing younger people in. And so through the collaboration and understanding people's needs, we want to get there. And then Project Rich. There's a number of projects which are happening on a regular basis. We're always one step ahead of the game, and we're trying to come up with different ideas. And through your normal succession planning with the directors in each of the areas, and focusing on the 7 areas of focus of Rotary, it's not difficult to come up with good quality projects. And if you've got the funding, you're probably in a good place. That said, there's a lot of things you can do in your community in volunteering and helping the elderly, helping the kids, helping a lot of people, which doesn't cost anything as well. So Project Rich, I mean, you have got to be doing a very large variety of things. And of course, our community focus is pretty solid. We've been building, there was one of the early projects in Karrinyup was a ramp down to the sea at one of the beaches, where you could get a wheelchair down and get into the water. And that was well back in the 70s and 80s that was built. And so there's this whole process of the legacy that we leave, and the Scout Hall, which we built, is still seriously well used and organised. So going back to some of the areas where we work now, our Stirling Farmers Market is probably the key to our success. It's a solid community presence, and we build local relationships. So every Sunday from 7:30 to 11:30, we are at the Stirling City of Stirling car park, and it's a pop-up market totally focused on farmers' goods and food and coffee. And you create this environment where people want to come along. But these things don't just appear. Over our 40 years, we've had lots of different fundraising processes, and we've been in dips where we've been really without a fundraising process. And people in our team have just stepped up. Many years ago, we were really in a dip, and one of our members just stepped up and said, "Okay, we're going to run an annual fair in Stirling." And so that brought the whole club together and grew out of that. From that, we grew to our mother club, which is the Scarborough Rotary Club, run a swap mart and have done very successfully for a lot of years. They then said to us, "Would you like to run the food van at the swap mart?" Then comes the process of the swap mart being sort of threatened because there was a huge revamp of the Karrinyup shopping centre, where they might have lost their area. So we started looking for Plan B, and the Stirling Farmers Market came out of that. We then engaged a number of people to help us build the beginning of the Stirling Farmers Market. But that took us at least 18 months of work as our Plan B before it was even possibly going to fly. The local government authority were very stringent on the rules and regulations and how that went forward. But once we got that in place, we're now in our 11th year, and the Stirling Farmers Market is a serious community capacity building place to be with their friends. There's people that just come there on a regular basis. And to give you an example of how special it is to the community, we were asked to close it down during COVID. We were only closed for 2 weeks. The reason was that, whilst we said, I think we should stay open because it's it's food, it's a really important service. The community contacted the local government authority and said, "What are you doing closing down our market?" and basically came back to the local government authority and said, "Would you get yourself organised?" And they came back to us. Within 2 weeks, we were back online and operating. Community-driven process, just wonderful. Then with this, the roof here is a huge thing at the Riding for Disabled. We've been connected to the Riding for the Disabled in Kareen for now 18 years, and we've had the privilege of watching them grow and blossom. And it got to a stage where they just said to us, "Look, when it rains, this place becomes a quagmire. We need to have a roof." And again, our engineers within our team got together and designed a cover for this. We got all the approvals in place, and this was a $500,000 project. So we connected with Lottery West, City of Stirling, and our own club to just help the Riding for Disabled. And these are the sort of things that, whilst it takes a long time and a lot of hard work, and goodness me, dealing with local governments is hard enough. But with our tenacity and our focus, this now is one of the supreme support mechanisms for the disabled in our area. But that's an 18-year-old journey, and they just sitting there watching those kids and the smiles on their faces and what they get out of it and how they grow and blossom. That is your feedback from it. In contemporary stuff, up comes the Ukrainian refugee problem. We were working with our Stirling Farmers Market, and our vendors there are just so generous because they understand that everything that's happening with the farmers market is going back into the community. There's no commercial aspect to this at all. And so we started with just having the vendors giving food, and the number of volunteers came and picked up the food parcels, and they were distributed. And some hundreds of families now in WA are being supported by some of the food that's coming out of our vendors who are donating this. But the interesting part of that, when you start doing these things, I got a phone call from a benefactor saying that I see what you're doing. I would like to give you $10,000. And of course, I'm immediately thinking this is a spam. What's this on about? So I rang this guy up. We missed each other a number of times. I'm getting a bit worried about it. But finally, we connected. He's the CEO of the foundation, which is supporting kids, and it worked out that he's got a background similar to me. He's an ex-diver in the Navy, and I was a submariner. And we got talking, and we sort of said, "Well, this is where we're going, and what do you want us to do with that?" And quick as a flash, he's turned it into $20,000 just through that conversation of your connections and your understanding. And so we immediately created a RABS account, set it up as a charity, deposited the $20,000 in there, and then you're able to tell other Rotary clubs that we're now on this track supporting the Ukrainian refugees. And then suddenly, Rotary clubs are saying, there's a RABS account, we'll put our money to it. And suddenly I think we're going to match the benefactors' money and keep on going. We've connected with Red Cross, who are the professionals in this game, and now it's becoming more than just food parcels. It's getting to the real support for the Ukrainians that are in our area. And that just came from a volunteer process that grew into somebody seeing that, I want to be a part of that, and suddenly you double the 20 grand and you've got 40 grand to look after these people and support Red Cross, who are doing a great job. These are the stories that keep our members growing, keep our members connected. Then we've had a 10-year project in Zambia. We were working in the international scene, but we're looking for something where we could help. And we came across this lovely young lady here, Joyce Chimbula. She started with about 3 kids, and she's now grown to probably about 150 kids in a school which is for vulnerable and orphan children in Ndola in Zambia. And we're now sort of assisting there. Our focus was to just provide water, because water and sanitation is one of our focuses. And as I said to Joyce, if we can give you water, you're able to then grow your crops. You're then able to feed your kids. And then the next step is not only can you do that, you can then build your school. So they've got other processes where church groups in the United States and in Australia are starting. They've already built these 2 classrooms, and with all new fitting out with the desks and chairs and books and teachers. And that was purely as if you have water, you can have the food. If you have the food, you can build. Once you can build, you can then grow that even further. And of course, the solution to these children's needs is nutrition, because they are part of the HIV era, and so there's a lot of people on antiretroviral drugs, so needing protein. And suddenly, because you've got water on their patch, we've still got a little bit more work to do to make it water secure. But if we don't start with that, Joyce spends a lot of time, obviously, keeping the educational side of things. Other people are helping with the school building, but all our job is to provide water, and we join in with a group of people and get moving. So, in very broad terms, that's my story. It's a journey of 40-odd years so far. We are the daughter club of a club which is around for 60-odd years. We're still connected to them very closely. We collaborate with all of our clubs around where we can. Our project in Zambia is connected to 2 Rotary clubs in Ndola. So internationally, nationally, and locally, our collaborative process is pretty solid. And I'm pretty excited to be a part of it.
That's an amazing story, Peter Durrant. It's an amazing story, and well done. Well done. Peter, prior to coming on, we were talking about utilising Rotary youth programs to strengthen your club and to provide insurance into the future. What's Karrinyup doing there? So
very strong on the youth portfolios, everything from Ryla, Ripen, Ryleap, Rotary Youth Exchange, you name it, we're part of it. And we asked the kids at the beginning of this, an expectation is would you like to give back and come to our Stirling Farmers Market and participate? And we get a huge response from that. We've got youth exchange students who have gone out years ago, still coming back to go onto our roster to help out. And when you get the younger exchange students talking to the older exchange students, and you see that whole thing blossom, then suddenly a new member joins, and they've got some young kids who could possibly go on youth exchange, and suddenly you've got the parents of people who have been involved, and suddenly they think, well, now the kids are no longer racing around with the driving them all over the place. I'll come and join Rotary. And so that whole process is so key to our connections with all of our youth. It's stunningly good.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Now it's over to past Australian Rotaract Chair Sam Fuster for a question about administrative strength. Over to you, please, Sam.
Thanks, Tara, and thank you, Peter. So one of the points you mentioned was being administratively strong. The clubs I've worked with and the clubs that I've helped over the years have really struggled to find members who want to volunteer for the administrative side of the club versus the other roles and experiences that a club can offer. So how did your club get members involved to become administratively strong?
I think the main thing is the length of time we've been in the game, and our secretary has been in place, seriously diligent in what's going past. But I don't make light of this. It is a difficult area to navigate, and if you don't understand the intricacies of Rotary, it can be fairly difficult to understand. I respect that deeply, but it's because over time our secretaries have stayed in their roles for quite some time, and we've been fairly forward thinking. The mere fact that we've kept all of our documentation and we've kept it on site to be attracted to people to read. But it's little and often you've got to continue to do the administrative. As soon as somebody leaves, you've got to update your documentation. Somebody joins, you get them on there very quickly. You then make sure that each through the year, we have a very standard process. Come the end of the year, you update everything because your next bill is coming through there, and that's the connection between administratively strong and financially sound. And then come to the end of the Rotary year, you've got to be one step ahead of the game. But you connect all of that. It's a team effort. You've got to connect that to your succession plan, and you've got to have your forward processes. It's like running a business. We're a lot of business people in our club who are pretty dynamic in those areas, but we have a pretty special secretary, I can tell you.
Super. Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Sam. Now I'd like to go over to District Governor-elect 9640, Lisa Hunt. There's a good question here about your social impact information. Over to you, please, Lisa.
Thanks, Kero, and thanks, Peter. Just so interesting what you've shared. And I'm really curious. So you had a couple of pictures there just around from your social impact information. So not just the money you raised, but I guess that the volunteer hours, the number of people and stuff. How do you share that information? Is that just within the club? Are you sharing it externally? What do you do with it?
There's a couple of things. It's certainly sharing it within the club because we want the people to understand the value of their time. And that can't be underestimated. But we've also had a number of speakers come to us who are experts in managing social engagement, social impact, and it's a whole new world. I'm not really across it as much as I want to be, but I know it's an area that we need to get into and measure our social impact. It's a process which can be done. Mm-hmm. And I think over a period of time, we will move to a point where we do it more professionally. And I think because we've got a pretty solid base and we've got good data and we've got the ability to engage professionals, I think it's something that we will do for the future. It's so important that we do put a figure on the value of volunteering, the value of that social impact.
Yeah, and I think it's that attractiveness, particularly of our Generation Z, who are looking for that purpose and that why.
Yes.
This kind of information is what they look for on our websites and our Facebook and our social media. And so that's why I kind of asked the question about how you share it, because I don't think we're actually doing it quite well or consistently. So it's an opportunity to improve.
Part of the reason my son ended up doing a a graduate certificate in social impact at University of Western Australia. And exactly as you're saying, Lisa, the younger generation want to know about these sorts of things. And so he was also a Rotary Exchange student, and he sort of said to me that, you need to get a little bit more focused on this. It may be an offer I couldn't understand, you know the story. And so it just made a lot of sense to me. And so I started in a small way, just thinking about the way in which we value our labour. And it's significant. There's people have put in, I used 5 hours. That's a mere bagatelle to some of the Rotarians who put in some serious time. So that 4.6 million would be significantly more, and $35 an hour, is a minimum, of what these people are worth. So it's got to be quantified in some way, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, thank you, Peter. Amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Peter. Peter, looking at going to come back to a topic that we have talked about from time to time because of what our models are telling us. We talked about, I love the work that you've done on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but one of the barriers to inclusion is affordability. And I see the work you've done with people with disabilities, but of course, the average income, and this is a very sweeping generalisation, the average income of a person with significant disability is significantly lower than, let's say, the male average. How do we make Rotary affordable? I'm not just talking about the meal part of it that you mentioned, which is substantial, but that the price of Rotary, that price that we charge every year, because we're seeing from some of the models that is an issue.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that?
There's a couple of things. First of all, little story. I was the charter president of the Rotary Club of Exmouth, 1,200 kilometres north of Perth. And I was at that stage a young business person. And I said, what I want to do is I want to have a breakfast meeting. And so nice and easy, business-like, get out there and go. But of course, Exmouth is one of those places that swells from about 2,500 to about 7,500 in the time, and all the grey nomads come up, and they've got no interest in sitting down for breakfast. They're still sleeping in. And so we then realised that we could only really have a dinner meeting. And so the dinner meeting then becomes your social extravaganza. That's what you're connected to. And of course, that's where you start adding costs. And we changed to that process purely because you had more people wanting to come and be a part of that. So once you try and understand part of your why, and we're a dinner club, if I said to my club we're going to go to a lunch or a breakfast, or we're going to have just a brief fortnightly meeting, it just wouldn't work for our club. So that means we're going to be a little bit more costly than most, because you pay $35 for your dinner, and our fees are probably $250. And if you said to some of these young kids $250 a year, you'd probably not get them attracted all that well. So what is the alternative? Well, it's to be involved. And you create that community process where we have a number of people who work with us at the Stirling Farmers Market who couldn't afford to join the club, couldn't afford to be there, but they're there every Sunday and supporting us. We've created Paul Harris Fellows for these people, for their contribution, where we build the recognition in. They're part of our family, and so for all intents and purposes, they're Rotarians as far as I'm concerned. And so it's creating that environment through your community connection and coming to your club. So when they come to our club, we'll pay for them to come to our club, even if one of the people will pay for it personally, because we just love them to be part of our team. And so it's that cross connection and the creation of opportunities to be involved. And our Friends of Rotary is a significant group, and we've done a whole lot of work through businesses in our area who want to be a part of it, but they'll build us a food van. They'll do it for nothing, and it's those relationships you build and your community connectedness, I think, is the way in which you achieve that, and connected to the youth.
Super. Thank you, Peter. So Karrinyup has achieved this more modern version of a club that has created a community around the club with layers of friends and volunteers, and so you have multiple paths in and ways of getting involved, ways to get involved.
Yes, and you think about the roller coaster of the membership. We have been in the past up to 70 odd in our club, and we've gone right down to sort of the high 20s, and now we're heading back out north. We're at about 38 now, and with prospects of growing to 40 or more. But that's just the actual members. But our connection through associate membership, through honorary membership, through Friends of Rotary, through that we have a significantly larger group connected to us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. I'd like to move to one of the other areas now, which has been found to be pretty important in terms of helping new members along the path from becoming involved to becoming fulfilled by Rotary, and that's the learning environment. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of outcomes of a good learning environment, but how specifically does Karrinyup address, say, a Rotary learning and development environment, particularly for new people?
Yeah, I don't think we do that as well as we could, to be frank. We are such a busy club that somebody comes in and starts working with us. If we took, say, the Stirling Farmers Market, we have a very solid 5-role document, and we bring people on through that process because to run the market, you have to be professional, you have to be organised. And so we bring people in, we double them up for 2 or 3 times, and then they run solo with a supporter, and then run solo on their own. So I think we do that very well. Mm-hmm. But there's getting the Rotary information to the people who are growing with us and understanding where we've come from. We can only do that by little bits in each of our meetings to talk about. We have a number of our members who do Rotary information type processes to try and build that story. But I think the main thing is because we're project rich, and there's so many, whether it's international, whether it's vocational, we actually have an Earth Committee. We started it with an Earth Committee actually before we had the 7th Avenue, and that is a solid attractor for people as well. And so once you've got all of those areas working well, our vocational director is dynamic and having a whole lot of scholarships happening. And we're now getting into the apprenticeship support. So there is so much for people to be involved in that I think by osmosis, a lot of this just comes through being project rich.
Mm-hmm. Do you have pathways to connect people, say, to things like work with district, which is a broadening experience, or fellowships or Rotary action groups or that sort of thing?
Yeah, right across the team, we've got a number of people who are involved with district in different ways. We've had 2 past district governors, people who have been assistant governors, and certainly leading projects. We've just come out of our last year as the Rotary Club of the Year for our district because of that connection back to the district roles. But more importantly, I think it's our collaboration with other clubs. We visit other clubs on a regular basis. We grow with other ideas, and there's nobody's got the best idea. We just learn so much from other clubs that I think We just attend lots of other clubs. They attend us. We had an alumni for the Rotary Foundation. We had Richard Court speak at that function, a past Premier of WA, plus the ambassador out of Japan. And we filled the room, nearly 90 people in the room from a whole lot of Rotary clubs. And it's having those sorts of functions and connected back to the Rotary Foundation alumni, all the old GSE members and Youth Exchange and all sorts of other processes. Once you get those continually happening, you just, again, by osmosis, you're just connecting through the district to everyone else that are part of your team.
Thanks, Peter. So Karrinyup is really is a traditional Rotary club in a sense that, in a good sense, that it works, it maintains a network. It works a network both ways, inwards and outwards. Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Fantastic. Just a couple more questions, I think. We might have time for a couple more questions. But committee structure, committee team structure, best practice modelling points to strong teams and committees within a club as being important to its health. How does Karrinyup rate in that regard?
Well, I think the first thing is anybody can be involved with any committee. We have a very strong process of whatever you want to be involved with, get involved. We've had the international director spending a lot of time in Socks for the City and the community group. We have people working across projects all the time. So rule 1, everybody's in membership. Rule 2, you can be involved with whatever you want to do. We have obviously a coordinator of each of the standard. We invented a new Earth Committee. That's still trying to find its future, but we will find that future at some stage. But then you have the galvanising piece where you got the 50th anniversary project, which brings everybody together. So it's all in, basically.
Fantastic. Just a thought. I mean, and it's this is coming back to something that Jessie Harmon, our Rotary International Director, did earlier this year and presented on earlier this year about clubs being member-centric. And I think you've explained a lot of that, but within that member centricity, there's the subset of encouraging women members as leaders. How does Karrinyup rate in that regard? I mean, we've got a current lady running our show, and we've had regular. We don't sort of look at the gender side of things. It's whoever wants to be part of it, and we've had. We're lucky enough to have that diversity of everybody being part of it. Very early in the piece, we had 3 ladies who started the show going in a row, and that was just delightful. But then, interestingly, after someone like Richard Prunster, who was he took it for 2 years through the COVID times, I then wanted to continue some of the work that Richard was doing, so I stepped up and did a second one. And then Jenny's come in this time. Kay is coming after Jenny. It's just a lovely situation where we don't have to worry about that. Fantastic. Over to Lisa Hunt for a last question before I ask you the question that I foreshadowed.
Sorry, really quickly. So, Peter, just what you were saying then reminded me of a note I took. So you mentioned about administrative strength to financially sound, and then you spoke about your succession planning. Now, succession planning is something that I'm very passionate about because it's part of what I do in my day job, and also too, I think within Rotary across not just clubs but district and more broadly. So how have you gone about that? What is your approach within the club that's probably been more successful than, say, some other clubs? How do you do that?
The straightforward, we go and ask them. So list of names, 38 members, all those who have been president before. So we go and speak to all of them. Do you or do you not have aspirations to have leadership and in this club? Now, there's some people, as long as I'm around here, I will never be a president. It's not my bag. I don't want to do it. So you put them on the side. Then there's some that are, well, I've thought about it. And then there's, I'm interested. And so that is your list immediately. so then you then spend time through the normal process. We've had up to 3 or 4 out, of president elect, president nominee, those have happened in the past. At the moment, we're looking for our president nominee, but we've always had the 3, and we've talked it through in as much as if your district governor, governor-elect, governor nominee are aligned, we should have our own presidents aligned to those people. So your president nominee connects to your governor nominee early, and you start to build that rapport. And so we have a map, and we just ask straightforward to the people, do you have aspirations to lead? Some say yes, some say absolutely no, and then you work that through.
Thanks, Peter. That sounds ideal. We just need to get more clubs doing that, I think, and having that pipeline.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Would be a model behaviour. Okay. Now back to the other question. Peter Durrant, why are you a Rotarian?
I was wound up by this one. This is easy. I'm in South Australia in 92, 93, I think. I'm the electrical engineer on HMAS Collins, the first of the new submarines. And somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, would you like to join Rotary? And it's the Rotary Club of Port Adelaide. And so I said, I'm interested in giving that a go. And I joined this small club in Port Adelaide, and they said, your timing's pretty good. We're coming up to a project of ours. We run an art show. I thought, fabulous. I'd love to see a little art show, nice room with a whole lot of paintings on the wall. Let's have a chat. And when we got going, it is the largest art show in the Southern Hemisphere. It's running across 3 entire wharf warehouses with all the major art people in Australia and a few internationals. And I'm sitting there absolutely agog that this group could pluck this. This is their annual process. They do this every year. And I'm thinking, I want to be a part of this. And at that stage, I wasn't sure how long I was going to be in South Australia, but I ended up getting posted up to Exmouth, and they were just starting a new Rotary Club there. I thought, I've been in 10 minutes, and the guy who was getting the Rotary Club going said, you want to be a part? Yeah, absolutely. I'll do whatever. Suddenly he moves on. I'm the charter president. And suddenly I'm thinking, goodness gracious me, this is a baptism of fire. But having seen what they did in Port Adelaide, I was actually brought in through a fireside chat, would you believe? I was taken to somebody's place. We sat at their place with a cup of tea, and they explained to me exactly what it's about. I saw that project. There was 2 gentlemen in the club who serenaded the guest speaker in every week with a song pertaining to the way they introduced them. They sang it in. And I'm thinking, this is just stunningly fun and so much goodness coming out of this that I was hooked. And I think that's why I'm still here now.
And I'm glad you are. The influence that you've had, as, by the way, those who don't know, Peter was District 9455's Rotarian of the Year last year, and Karrinyup, surprise, surprise, was the Rotary Club of the Year for District 9455. So great, congratulations on both those counts, past President Peter.
Thank you, Caro.
Now, okay, let's have a round of applause for Peter. Well done, mate. Great work. Great work, Peter Durrant. And by the way, enjoy that red, because I can see a part 2 of this coming up.
Yeah,
very much appreciated your contribution, your being in our audience, and have a good night, and thank you for being with us.